I was betting like.
I know, because the whole way up to it, you're like, I'm betting 20 grand. I was like, don't do it. So afterwards, you're like, no, I'm going to win. I'm going to win 50 if I bet 20.
I know. I'm so glad it was 52 grand with 20.
Yeah.
And I was going to bet the Bengals. So when you texted me,
I said, don't do it.
So we are back, episode 23. It seems like I'm just losing count here. We're doing so many, and we kind of were backwards on the last one.
I know, we got them confused, 21 and 22.
Because we were waiting because I was traveling.
You were traveling, and we had Urishna's like kind of in the vault. So.
I have been on a East Coast journey. I don't want to say tour. I don't want to say vacation. I don't want to say any of that stuff, but because it started with the
Steve
Weinbergers and our fitness workshop to kick off the season for the competitive shows, NPC shows, which was amazing. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But went over to visit my family in Mass. Got to see my brother's sister's mom. First trip being back since the death of my father, which was I did go visit my dad at his grave. And then went to Florida for a few days and got to see a few people there, and it was kind of cool. But let's talk a little bit about the seminar that we attended.
Yeah, so I flew up there the day before, and going up to New York's never easy because there's no good routes there for us.
For United.
No. So I had to go to San Francisco and then San Francisco to Newark, and then I had to take an hour and a half Uber out to Syosset because it's out on Long Island. When people think, oh, you're going to New York, they don't realize, well, you're not going to New York City, you're going outside. So got up there, and I always love going to that gym because it's got history just like Gold's Gym in California.
It's better.
It's got more history, visible history, because he's got everything on the walls.
A lot of memorabilia.
Yes.
It's like being in my office times 100, right? It actually has probably more pictures of me on that wall than my office, and Steve and Bev and their crew up there.
How long has that gym been open? Do you know?
I mean, I think well over 30 plus years.
Did it open in the 80s, 90s?
I believe in the 80s, I think. He's going to probably watch this and correct us, but
I'm sure. That's why I'm not saying, because I don't know. Yeah. I know it's.
And listen, Steve, we'll get you on here when you come out to Vegas.
I spoke to him about it. I said,
really?
Will you come on the podcast? He goes, I normally don't do them, but I'll come for sure.
Yeah. So I got to train. I actually went in early. You came a little later, but I went a day early just to work out, and I was able to film and whatever. But being on that equipment out there, I mean, they got some old school, new school.
Yeah.
You just have that vibe. The clanking weights, which we don't get a lot of in Vegas now, because we have polyurethane plates. It was awesome. I got to train on Friday, and the weather was actually better than what I expected. It was a little cold. It was freezing, actually, when the dogs were even, we took the dogs with us. They were pretty cold. But, we were all grouping up for this Saturday seminar, which I know you flew in for. And, we had a huge turnout, probably our biggest ever. And this thing started like over 10 years ago, where it was a meet and greet for me just to have a spot for that meeting inside the Mecca, East Coast Mecca, which, Steve has branded. And it now kind of migrated to this workshop. So I had a lot of familiar faces in there, with Arash, and, Sadiq came out, and Juan Morel, and, we had Juliana in there. We had Jen Dory fly in. Urishna came in. I mean, everybody was there. Sister Nino came.
Dan Solomon.
Yeah, Dan came out from the Olympia, give away a couple tickets. And, we all got to speak a little bit. I was a little short with the speaking, but, it gave people the opportunity to ask the questions, but more importantly, build up the confidence for people to get on stage. And I think now with the divisions, we have a lot of opportunity for people to compete. And they got to work out for the day. Steve said, try the gym out, and, just kind of be around the culture. And I think people are excited about that, especially after being locked up. We haven't had this for like a couple years now. Yeah. So for us to actually be able to be back at it and be able to share the experience with all these people that have been there before, and a lot of the familiar faces. If you remember, I opened up the thing, said, okay, who here has competed, who has not, and you see a lot of first-time people. And, you know, it was great. It was great.
I noticed, like, while you guys were up there speaking, I kind of looked around and I was paying attention, and people legitimately, you know how sometimes you go to certain events and people are there just to be there, but people are just sitting there and they were glued to whoever was speaking, and they were really absorbing it and taking it in. Like, they really wanted to get this information from each person that went up there.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest star seminar we had. I mean,
how many people do you think it was?
I mean, I think 400 plus probably rolled through there. Remember, people came and went. Yeah. But we had a lot of people that were, if you noticed, I mean, I knew you were filming. We have it, which we're going to be launching here.
Yeah.
You know, they were compiled in where the cardio was, so they couldn't even get to the boxing ring where we were all stationed. And, you know, I got to take a lot of pictures after. Heard a lot of great positivity. They talked a lot about the podcast. So I want to thank you guys, you know, for checking it out and following along. We've had great success with it. But, you know, what I took away from that seminar is, you know, it kind of brings me back to the early days and being uncertain about, am I capable to step on stage? And I think when people approach me about, hey, I want to get into competition, but I feel I'm not ready. And the truth is like, they always think they need to be bigger. I'm going to refer to the bodybuilding side, or even like men's physique classic, for the male side. They're always asking me like, hey, I need to put on more size. And, you know, that turns over to be the next year and then the next year because, oh, I'm not big enough. People never think they're ready. But what I try to tell people is anyone can compete because we have so many levels now in divisions, and there's novice, there's obviously open, and, you know, even for the teenagers, you know, 18 plus, you can compete. You know, you have a starting point. We all start dieting like 4 months out. So it's 16 weeks. And as you chisel down, the lighting on the stage, you know, you may drop 20, 30, sometimes 40, 100 pounds sometimes, but the cuts will make you appear so much bigger. How many times have you looked at someone on stage and said, wow, that person looks, especially when you first started watching bodybuilding shows, how incredible they look, but then you see them like in front of you and you're like, wow, they're not even that big.
Yeah.
But under the lights, the contours and the cuts, you know, and then of course with the oil and the deep tan, it brings out so much detail. Yeah. So you appear so much bigger. I mean, that seems to be, were you ever a victim of wanting to get on stage? I know you never competed, but did you ever think I would maybe if I got a little bigger or my legs were bigger?
I wanted to compete when I was younger, and there's a certain point where I remember looking in the mirror, and with anything I do in life, if I don't feel I can be the best or one of the best, I don't do it. And I remember looking in the mirror and going, okay, I have high lats. I have my right leg and left leg are different because I have a bad scar on my right leg. And I'm never going to be able to look a certain way that I think I need to look to be competitive. So I just decided I'm not going to compete because of that. I believe I could get as big as anybody. I mean, I was almost 290 pounds when I was young, and I'd go to the gym and I was as strong as anyone around, but I just knew I didn't have what it took.
I know, but you said you were 290.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it a good weight or?
I could lightly see my abs, so it wasn't like I was.
I know, but what made you want to train to get bigger? Why did you want to be 290? I mean,
I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder.
Okay.
And it was more.
I know, but being a pro bodybuilder means you got to get on stage.
Of course. No, I did. I trained to get there, and I thought, okay, I'm going to compete one day. But then reality hit me to where some people can't look and see things for what they are. They see things for what they want them to be.
So I'm not speaking out of context. You understand where I'm coming from, where so many people say to me, and I never would have competed. I'll be honest with you. I probably was victim of that. But when Andy Stratus at Gold's Gym Worcester said to me, if you compete in the Gold's Gym contest we're having, it was a closed contest for the gym only.
Yeah.
If you compete in this, I'll comp your membership. And that's why I did the show. Yeah. And that's where I got the bug for the first time. I finished second to a guy named Matt Christopher. A lot of you guys in Worcester, Mass. will remember he was like a legend in our area. He won every local contest.
Yeah.
And I was second to him, and I was like, wow, getting under the lights and the confidence and people saying, oh, you look good.
Yeah.
And looking back, I wasn't in shape to compete
at
a contest necessarily, but I didn't know how to diet either.
Yeah.
And then I linked up with Chris Aceto, and Chris Aceto taught me the right way. And then I got into the Iron Bodies Invitational or whatever it was in New York, Schenectady. And then I competed at the Teen Nationals. You know, I did a qualification show like a couple weeks prior. And I was at the Teen Nationals winning, and that's when I kind of caught the bug. But it was really when I flew to California a month later and walked into Gold's Gym Venice, and I said, this is what I want to do. But it took me a while to build the confidence.
But when you looked at yourself and you looked at yourself in the mirror, there's a different, like when I'm comparing, you knew, okay, I'm here and I have the structure. I have what it takes to go to the next level and the next level, the next level. I'm sure you didn't think I'm going to be Mr. Olympia one day at that point, but some people I'm just realistic. I wouldn't have been good. So that's why I never did it.
Yeah.
But I love to train, and I would go train with everybody, and so I just never competed.
Hey, can you pull up, J-Mac, the 93 Teen Nationals, Jay Cutler?
So 93, how old, was that the one with you and Branch? And
yeah, I was 18. So you can kind of see where I was. I mean, look at this right here. If we can have some images. Yeah, like it. But if you go to
look at that.
Go to the one with the collage of pictures. This is me backstage. I mean, you can kind of see the structure was there, right?
So when you look at someone there, like I look at that and go, okay. I mean, look at your legs already. Your legs then at 19 were bigger than some pros are right now.
Crazy, right?
So you knew you had what it took, and you see that and you just go, okay. As he progresses and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, he's got the physique. No difference than if you looked at like a Phil Heath for his first show. He had the. I was
215 here. 215. My mom bought me those trunks. Those are Andreas Cowling trunks. We were just talking about this. I just visited my mom when I was back in Worcester, Sterling actually, and she's like, I used to buy those trunks. I said, yeah, but you bought me the pink ones, and those are neon, like the neon green, and like, man, I left Chris Aceto's. Like I flew from Chris Aceto's in Maine down straight to North Carolina. My mom and my sister, Carrie, went, and we all, we're down there competing at the Teen Nationals. And I look now, and I was like, I dieted pretty hard for that. And
who else was in that show with you?
Caprice Murray. Do you remember Caprice Murray? Yeah. God, there was a few names in there, but Branch won the light heavies. I was a heavyweight. That's before they had super heavy. So, that was the beginning. And like I said, I don't think I would have competed if I wasn't coaxed into it, because I didn't really necessarily have the confidence either. So what I took from this seminar is there's a lot of people out there that want to believe that they are great, but they're just not confident. So when I speak to them, I notice how much they pay attention to, what I say. And, hey, we all started that way. And that's what I love to talk face to face with people, because it's so real, right? Because I can literally like envision myself as that person. Yeah. And it takes confidence, but once you get up there and you get the hang of it, it's
I think a lot of people, I think one thing too, like some of the people I train there at Steve's gym, that gym alone just motivates you.
It's so motivating.
I was just thinking about that. Here Steve's had this gym for 30, 40 years, however long it's been. And you and I were training, and Steve came over, and he legitimately said, what do you think of the gym? Is there anything you like or don't like? Is there some equipment? Like, he's been around for so long, and he still wants to know what people think, still thinking, how can I make my ridiculously iconic gym even better? Mm-hmm. Like, that struck, like, I really paid attention to that. Like, Steve really wanted to know what you thought. Obviously, we know the gym's amazing, but not many people.
Yeah, he always calls me and asks me what's out there for equipment. Yeah. And, it was just really good to spend some time. And we ended up flying over. We ended up going to Juan's opening a new restaurant. Yeah. So my cookie dealer, Juan Morel, him and Karen opened up their first restaurant, which was awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
They had a huge dinner for us, and we got to eat. And congratulations! I think they're opening today.
Yeah,
Valentine's Day
was
so
their grand
today's
opening.
the first day of their grand opening. So
congrats!
Shout out to them and the Reserve restaurant in Long Island. So,
the next day I left and flew home, and then you went.
Yeah, I went to Boston, and I went to see my family, and got to visit with my mom some, and like I said, I went and spent some time visiting my dad's gravesite, and I got to kind of get back in the mix of where I kind of came from, get to sit with my brothers a little bit. And it just brings back a lot of memories. So I grew up in Sterling, Massachusetts, and it was super small town. I went around and looked at some property, actually, while I was there, just to see. Because, it's funny. My brothers are in the concrete business. That's how I kind of got into all the construction stuff. But they actually have $1 million plus homes in Sterling, Mass. And for me, I'm kind of blown away because it's so far from Boston. And it's kind of like a very small, like a farming community. So for them to have extreme houses like that, I always wonder, how people afford that if they're not migrating to, what kind of business they're running. And I mean, we're talking 1.4, 1.5 million for homes there. And as you know, I mean, that's getting up there, especially in the East Coast. So I went to check out some of the properties, and my brother asked me the same question. I said, oh yeah, I took a ride up to Kendall Hill, and I looked at he's like, you thinking about moving back here? He thought I was crazy. Cause they look at Vegas and they're like, why would you ever leave there?
They're probably like thinking how to get out of here.
Yeah, because they're all in their early 60s, and they're winding down. My brother's a big farmer, and my other brother kind of just works, running the business and the back end, and it's pretty amazing what they've kind of built. But at the same time, like, they don't know anything but all gas with what they do. Like, they work all the time, and if they're not working, they're doing stuff around the house, or they're very involved with their grandkids and whatever. But just a lot different lifestyle than me, a lot different. And it was just great to go back. And I was very, very nervous about going back in February, to be honest, because of the weather. But it was bearable. And then, of course, Angie and I flew to Florida for like 3 days after, and, was able to go train at a couple of gyms. I trained at Iron University, which, Laura Lee's training at, and, although he took great care of us there. And, we went out and trained at TLF Gym out there with that clothing brand, and was able to check that out. And I got to see the old guys at BPI and meet up with Whitney and the crew there. And it was pretty cool. Just all in all, the weather was great. It rained the first day, but, Florida's getting busy, man. The traffic is like, I felt like I was in LA.
Yeah. Every time I go to Florida now, it's the same thing. It's like,
but I stayed in Hollandale Beach, and it's kind of funny because I was talking to Chris Aceto about, the history, and he's like, years ago that wasn't the best place, but now it's, built up, and everyone seems to be flocking there, and of course they said the snowbirds are here, meaning like all the people from the East Coast travel down, north, and we got to spend some time and kind of just eat some good food, and still working and doing my thing. And we just got back yesterday, which is great. Happy to be back.
Ready to get back on the road again?
No.
You done?
I'm glad I'm done for a minute. I get sick of the travel time. And, yesterday was Super Bowl Sunday, so I actually caught the second half of the game. And I wasn't, I was betting like.
I know, because the whole way up to it, you're like, I'm betting 20 grand. Yeah. I was like, don't do it. So afterwards, you're like, no, I'm going to win. I'm going to win 50 if I bet 20.
I know. I'm so glad. It was 52 grand with 20, And I was going to bet the Bengals. So when you texted me.
I said, don't do it.
No, you texted me like,
how broke
are you broke? And I'm like, I'm going to be. I was joking because my bet would have been bad because, as you know, in J-Mac, did you watch the game or? I mean, till the very end, it was like all Bengals, right? Pretty much. But actually, they kind of flopped the last cup, after
anytime someone hits when you're like, I'm going to win 52. Yeah. I'm thinking, but if you lose, you just lost 20.
So I should have stuck with Drake's bet and done the whole thing with the Rams, huh?
Or you just don't bet at all.
I mean, no, I know. that I'm up for the season. So I said, you know what? I'm going to leave it alone. And I didn't, because I didn't plan on watching. I was here shipping yesterday. I actually went right back to the office. And
yesterday it was the first Super Bowl. I didn't watch any of it. Nothing. I watched the halftime show, and that's it.
It's pretty cool. That's a lot of old school stuff.
Of course, that's like my generation. Yeah. Dre came out when I was in middle school. Like,
I was surprised to see 50 on there, though.
Did you see all the memes with 50 afterwards?
No.
Because he's fat. So they're like, inflation. It's not 50 cents anymore. He's $1.50 now. Dude,
well, Dre isn't in crazy shape anymore either.
Yeah, but Dre's old.
No, I mean, dude,
he's older than you.
I know, but remember when he was jacked when he showed up at the
didn't Stan who used to train him?
Stan McQuay trained him. Yeah,
he trained him. I think Flex Wheeler did something.
Eminem looks pretty solid still, and
But 50, like, why are you wearing a tank top like that?
Yeah, he was into, he trains at Gold's Venice sometimes when he's out there. Yeah.
But
I was always a fan. I love his show. I love the Power Show and, Book of Ghost and all that. So
you like all the old school shit.
Yeah, that was the music I used to train to in my home gym. I had, Snoop Dogg and I had, Dre, and 2001, The Chronic was like the CD that I used to play all the time. And, it brings back a lot of memories. So I know a lot of people didn't like the halftime show that I knew, like they were questioning, but I thought it was fitting for LA. And,
of course.
For where it was. And but
Dr. Dre has an imprint.
I have to admit I was rooting for the Bengals to win it just because I think it would have been great for, Cincinnati. And I was kind of surprised, though, because they showed LeBron and he was extremely happy for L.A. I mean,
he lives in L.A.
I know, but he's from Ohio, so I figure,
Oh, that must have been a tough one for him.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, I was thinking, okay, he would be rooting for...
And then, so he was rooting that, but then he broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time record over the weekend, and because of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, even they showed him, and they didn't say anything about the record being broken, and we talked about that was a little.
So is that why you did that old school picture of you and Ronnie? Were you reminiscing, thinking of a?
No, let's pull that up though, Jay, if we could on my Instagram. So, you know what? I don't know. Maybe subconsciously I like
because you're thinking about music back in the day, and then you threw this picture up of you and Ronnie.
I woke up at 5:00 this morning. And I looked at my Instagram and I said, okay, what could I put on here? And I came across this picture. And this is the 2001 Olympia at Mandalay Bay. I competed for the first time at Mandalay Bay, 99, but this was 2001. We were still competing there. And this is, I said, the beginning.
Yeah.
And I said, when your idol becomes your rival. Yeah. And I've often said that quote because I idolized Ronnie Coleman. Like, he was the guy that I started with Dorian Yates, and then, of course, Ronnie won the Olympia, and that was the guy that I followed. But this is when I actually got to stand toe-to-toe on U.S. territory. I did this in Europe a year before when we went on the European tour, but for the first time, we got called out together. And I always talk about the circumstance, and sometimes circumstance is everything. So the little backstory to this, okay, we can't see the numbers there, but Ronnie and I drew consecutive numbers that year.
Yes,
which was a fortune for me because we all line up.
Yeah.
Before they do the call-outs.
Yeah.
And when I stood next to Ronnie Coleman, it was like I looked so incredible from the front that year. I do not think if we were number 1 and 2, I can't see the numbers, but I might have been 1 and 2 actually. Is it 1 and 2? Okay. If I was 10, I don't know if I would have got this opportunity.
You might not have.
Because we talk about...
You might have been overlooked.
Yes. Has there been some overlooked competitors in shows? Usually, listen, I have to credit the judges because they can usually tell physiques.
Yeah.
But when you get to that level, I still felt having a name on behind you, like you have been there prior, it definitely carries weight, right? But in this circumstance, I was 8th the year before here.
Yeah.
And here I was placing, top 2.
I've always said this, and sometimes people don't understand what I mean by this. With any great success, there's always an element of luck that you might not have known about, whether someone met someone at the right time or whatever. But like you said, if you wouldn't have got called next to Ronnie, where they were forced to see you next to him, would you have ever got put next to him?
I don't know.
And that's that luck of that number potentially could have changed the trajectory of your whole career. So if you would have been out in the second call out or maybe the second line, you might not have ever gotten that opportunity, and you might not have became the Jay Cutler.
Yes. So this was a huge, huge leaping point and controversial this year. I feel I should have won that contest. I was ahead by prejudging. This is when they had prejudging on Friday. Maybe they had it in the morning. I think they had Saturday morning, Saturday night.
Okay.
And I was ahead by 6. And he came back at night. This was after 9/11, and this show almost got canceled, by the way, because the 9/11 tragedy happened 6 weeks prior to this contest. And I remember Vegas was on heavy alert for possible terrorist attacks. And they talked about the Olympia. Was it going to take place? Well, I kept going. I kept training. I came down from about high 280s to compete at about 260 in this condition in a week's time. I was very, very big. I was conditioned early. At 10 weeks out in this contest prep, I was ripped. I was already in crazy shape at 10 weeks out.
Wow.
I started my training at 20 weeks because I was so motivated because Chris Aceto was in my corner telling me, you're going to win this contest. And when I got to stand toe-to-toe with Ronnie, and you see this comparison, this is the first pose, the front double bicep, you know, I hung pretty strong with him. And it was from the backside where he was still a little more dominant. But the judges saw me as potentially the winner in the prejudging.
Yeah.
And this built my confidence a lot, to go back to the confidence thing. This is where I knew I was solidified, and this is the first time, this actual contest was the first time I realized that I could be the best bodybuilder and win the Mr. Olympia, because now the judges would give me the recognition.
Yeah.
And I was looking at myself in comparison to Ronnie, and people tell me, yeah, you stacked up great. You know, you were ahead by points. I mean, so obviously I felt that I had it. Now, granted, you know, we saw later I challenged Ronnie every year and fell short after that. I sat out 2002. But, you know, this is where my career really started to take off. I won $60,000 at this contest. That was the second place prize. And today, that money's about $150.
I think it is $150. Yeah.
So first place was $110, and second place was $60 at this point. Now it's $400,000 for first, and it's $150. So we've seen the transition in 20 plus years.
Yeah.
You know, the prize money has gone up. Not a huge. I mean, it's gone up quite a bit, but you know, this was the heyday of bodybuilding. If you look at some of the comments on there, people will say when bodybuilding, like, I don't think will there ever be another rivalry like Ronnie Coleman and myself?
No, because there was never someone who, I don't see anyone right now that's that dominant like Ronnie was, and there wasn't somebody that was coming up, because you were still in your 20s there.
Yeah, I was 28,
29?
27.
There's somebody coming up in their 20s against somebody that people looked at the physique as potentially one of the best physiques ever to come on stage, and you legitimately beat him in the prejudging. So I don't see anyone coming up. I don't see two people coming up right now that are battling like that close.
We got a little taste with the Kai Green and Phil Heath battles, right?
A little bit, but it wasn't. I don't think it was the same as you and Ronnie. I just don't. Probably for multiple reasons.
Do you think the magazines made this a better rivalry than social media? How did you follow this rivalry back then? You weren't at this contest, right?
No, not at that one. No. You followed, all you had were magazines, and there was a website back in the day called Muscle Time.
Yes.
Remember, you had to pay like $2 a month for it.
I didn't know you had to pay for it.
Yeah, it wasn't free.
Okay.
But Muscle Time had all the pictures and all the stuff on there. So, and then slowly it transformed into Get Big and Muscle Mayhem and whatnot. But for the most part, we still waited for the magazine to come out, and you would see on some of these other message boards, somebody would type on there what was going on. But we didn't have social media to push things this way.
Did you know who I was? But yeah, because you had met me in Southern States.
Yeah, no, I knew who you were
in '96 or something, right?
The year before. Yeah,
okay.
No, I had met. I followed it all since, I would say, '97.
Is it amazing that people still talk about this year?
Well, no, because it's
like they talk about 2001, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about what could have been, and what did you say? Tell me the
people,
conversation you just had with J-Mac when we came in here and you talked about this.
Like when I look at this picture, there's 1,000 stories to it. It's not just a picture of two guys, doing a front double bicep. When I look at this, I think, at that moment in time, Ronnie was trying to build his, legacy, but you were the guy that was coming up that nobody knew of, and you made a name for yourself that at that point, let's just say you would have won that show. Mm-hmm. So now Jay wins the Olympia. What happens next year? Does Ronnie Coleman come back furious and be amazing for the next 5 years? And then you get second. And then what happens if one of the other years, Lavroni or someone else came in and they got second and you got third? Like, it could have changed the whole trajectory of your career. I mean, everything. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Ronnie was looked at as like the GOAT, and here this guy is that keeps just nipping at his heels and just right there, it built your brand up and it built your legend. So when you did beat him, it just exploded your career. So this moment in time here, the Jay Cutler we know today might not have had the same outcome right now at this moment in your time if you would have won that show. Mm-hmm. We don't know. I mean, you might have won 2 or 3 and retired, and you would have said, I'm done. And you might have went in a totally different direction. You might not even be involved in bodybuilding. You might have made some investments and said, I'm not around. But so this picture to me there's just so many directions it could have went.
Yeah, I mean, it built up my confidence. So I took a month off after this contest, and then I started training for my first Arnold Classic victory.
Yes.
2002. And then, of course, I skipped the Olympia in 2002, and I decided, do the Arnold and the Olympia in 2003, and that's when Ronnie came back like a monster, right? But I can tell you that my training was so on point during this time. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by on point is anytime I went to the gym, I had the craziest pump, the best progress, and I was eating like crazy, and my body would just absorb the food. If you said to me, well, what was your calories like? I mean, I was eating like 1,000 carbs a day every day, and I was still in that kind of condition. So when you can eat that much food and everything just clicks, there was no pain. I was young enough where I was in the prime of my bodybuilding career. People always ask, what's the prime age, right? I think the body peaks when it's in the late 30s, depending on when you start, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that point, my body was so fresh and so absorbing. Anytime I went to the gym, I didn't have to train with extreme weights. I just went in there and I just did the same routine. And what I want to point out is from day one, I started training, working under Chris Aceto to the day I retired. I basically ate the same food. I trained exactly the same. People always think
the same food.
I know, but people think that you need to change things. And I'll be honest, I didn't have to change anything. I literally ate the 6 meals a day. And granted, I went up to 7 sometimes, sometimes 10, depending on off season. But it was the same kind of foods, but the training each week. So if I did chest on a Monday, and I started with incline dumbbells, and then I went over to flat flies, and I would do the same order of movements every single week. To this day, you train with me. Yeah. Do we ever really change things up?
We always start with an incline.
Yes,
incline,
whether it's
hammer, dumbbells or hammer.
Yes,
hammer now for safety reasons.
So do you have to change your workouts all the time? No.
I don't think so.
If you train with enough intensity, there's only so many things you can do. What if you're training at home or you're training at a gym that doesn't have the equipment?
Yeah.
You're very limited, right? If you're doing dumbbells. So what do you do? Dumbbell incline, dumbbell flat, dumbbell decline, flies.
Pullovers.
Pullovers. I mean, there's only so much limitation you have. So I think people expect you, and I notice that a lot with people that I train, they expect things to change so much. And I don't feel like you have to change as often as people think. Now we have these new techniques that the internet's opened up all these different types of training, right? Yes. We went through this with the heavy duty training with Dorian Yates. I mean, how much did you change up your training? Did you look at routines from the magazines, or do you look at routines on social media and say, you've never said to me, as we've trained for how many years, hey, why don't we try this exercise because I saw it on? Never, right?
Never. I always just knew what worked for me and what I trained just because I enjoy it.
But how did you learn?
Did
you read a book, or did you follow the gym, or did someone teach you?
I looked at stuff in the magazines, but I think for me, I would do certain movements and I knew what worked, what I felt comfortable with in doing, and I just stuck to those. If I went and trained chest today, I'd be doing the same things. The only difference is I don't go heavy on the flat bench anymore.
Why?
Because I have a shoulder injury.
Okay.
And I used to train, I know I overtrained when I was younger, because we used to we would start off on the flat bench with 1 plate on each side, and then you'd add a quarter, and then 2 plates, and a quarter, and 3, and a quarter, then 4, and sometimes go up to 4 1/4. You don't need to do all that.
Yeah,
but we do that. We do that for incline, and then we do dumbbells, incline, decline. Like, I train too much, but I learned that there's only so many movements you can do for a muscle. You don't need to do all these crazy, I'm going to do this certain thing at a certain angle or whatever. It's like, no, just go grab weight and move it.
I think as you get older and you transition, maybe you need to adjust it. Like
the weight for sure.
You don't free bar squat. And the reason you don't is because you have a shoulder injury that you can't hold the bar.
Yes.
Right? And I just watched a video of Brett Wilkins.
Yeah.
And he had these straps.
That's the sissy bar. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It goes over and you can grab it from the front.
Okay.
And I've done we had that. David Baywood and I would do that in Wisconsin.
So this is how you
I could do those.
Okay.
For some weird reason, and I don't know if it was the way the weight was on my neck, I used to get dizzy from it, even if I did one plate on each side. But there was times we would do it, we'd go up to like 3 plates. But for me, I'd rather do the hack squat, or I'd rather do like one of the squat machines. Yeah. I'm not trying to be a pro bodybuilder, so I don't need to go lift some crazy heavy weight. But yeah, as you get older, you gotta work around.
Yeah, see, I haven't really adapted to those. Like there's a lot of like hack squats we still do. We still deadlift.
Yeah.
We do T-bar rows. We don't do a lot of bent barbell rows, which I used to do, which we probably should, like I like the reverse grip. But everything was very simple.
Yeah.
And I would go in the gym and I would do the same routines every week. And I was on the Olympia stage almost winning and eventually won. And to this day, I still do the same thing. So to go back to what I was, like the diet still, like I had egg whites this morning, 2 whole eggs and Ezekiel bread. I had some cottage cheese. I had 2 slices of turkey bacon, and I had cream of rice from Pride Foods, So I had that, and then I have trifecta meal, so I have chicken and rice. Everything's like, and then I'll have some red meat probably at some point today, bison and rice, from trifecta. So it's like I have like that set schedule that I followed for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
And I just think that everyone's always looking for a different answer to success.
Do you think with some of the physiques now, like that there's too much machine work?
I think there's too much machines. I think it's overeating. I think it's too much cheating.
Yep.
I think all that.
Yeah.
Dude, I would starve, man. I would starve. I talked about eating 1,000 carbs. I'd still be hungry.
Yeah.
I remember being like, I can't wait to eat. And people would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Eat. You're eating 3 cups of rice and whatever. But I'm like, nah, I just want to be able to eat like, less and then just like more fats or whatever else, right? I just was on this super low fat diet. So I would literally have like protein powder or fish at the time and rice or, pasta or whatever else. That was what I was eating. I literally dieted for that show on a lot of protein powder, to be honest. So people say you can't get lean and can't get muscle.
What show is it? This is random. What show is it? I remember you telling me you drank like Diet Mountain Dew. Was that the show?
Yeah.
Where you said, I just stopped, cut it out the night
drank
before?
12 a day.
Yeah.
I drank 12 cans.
I remember asking.
You believe that, J-Mac?
Yeah, no, I remember him telling me, he was like, because I was like, yeah, this was like 20 years ago. You and I had this conversation. I was like, yeah, I like diet soda. You're like, there's nothing wrong with diet soda. It's just caffeine and water. And I was like, shit, Jay Cutler told me I could drink it. And he's like, man, I drank a 12-pack a day. And then the day before the show, I just cut it out and it shrink wrapped me.
I will tell you the craziest concoction ever. Okay. So Chris Aceto was, when he wrote my diet, when he wrote the diet out, he would write, 100 C for carbs.
Yeah.
50 P for protein. That's his diet. So meal 1 would be, it was just numbers and carbs and protein. No fats, nothing. That's what he would say. So meal 1 through 6 today is going to be this.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care what you eat as long as you reach your macros.
Yeah.
Which is what they call now. We didn't call them back then. It was just carbs and protein.
Yeah.
So one of my meals, bro, I would mix protein, 2 scoops of protein, 50 grams of protein with Coca-Cola.
Oh my God.
Regular Coke. Okay. And I had a ice machine in my house like that would crush ice with the refrigerator. So I'd mix it and I would eat it out of a bowl like it was cereal. So, and I would eat it and I would chew, because I love to chew ice, right?
Yes.
And then I would literally have my side of white rice. I had a rice cooker. I had basmati rice and I would put honey on it. I would cut up asparagus. I would put asparagus inside of it. And I would eat that on the side. I would pour honey all over it for the extra. I would take, a couple tablespoons of honey, and I would pour it on just to reach my macros for the meal. And that's one of the meals I would eat. Coca-Cola mixed with chocolate protein.
Wow.
Regular Coke.
Like, wasn't it all clumpy and chunky?
Yeah, but dude, I just sucked it down, man. I would mix it up in the bowl, and I would eat it.
Sometimes I'll boil water, and I'll put like 2 cups of boiling water, and then I'll put 2 scoops of protein, and then make it liquid, and then I'll pour that over oatmeal.
Okay.
So then it's like, it tastes like, I'll use like your marshmallow protein. Yeah. It tastes like a marshmallow milky.
A lot of people
oatmeal.
do that, but no one mixes Coca-Cola and chocolate protein
that's
ever.
Disgusting.
But it goes back to, I eat not for taste, but for function.
But at what point did you go? How did you go? Would you need the sugar from the Coke?
Yeah, and it's the only thing I had. You know what I mean? I didn't have Gatorade that day. I got into powdered Gatorade because it was dextrose, right?
Yeah,
so I used to buy the big things at Costco. Instead of just buying a bottle like from the store every day, the cheaper version was to just get the dextrose from, and just pour it in, and I would mix my Gatorade that way. That's how I got a lot of my calories by drinking it.
See, it sounds like something you do when there's nothing left. Like when I was a kid and we were broke, I would have cereal and there'd be nothing, and I'd use water with my cereal. It was disgusting, but I never thought to pour Coke.
Yeah, I just, and people used to see me funny. I trained at Crunch and Kaleidoscope off the 5 freeway, and I used to walk out of the gym when I was like 3, 4, 5, whatever weeks out with a can of Coke. And I remember people looking at me being like, dude, you can't do that. I'm like, I got this. Don't worry, You know
what I think when you say that? I think of those old Battle for the Olympia videos, and Marcus Rule would get done, and he'd go outside and he'd start smoking a cigarette.
Really?
Yeah, he'd start smoking a cigarette.
And you say you can't do that, but that was very common overseas.
Yeah. Or he'd be drinking warm beers. And
I hate to break the news to everyone, but that's what I was doing when I looked like this.
So the rule of the thumb is, kids, if you want to look like Jay Cutler, go drink Coke. And
that I felt I should have had a Coca-Cola sponsor at the time.
Did you try?
No, I didn't try. But this is just shows that there was no cardio for this show. Zero cardio.
I don't do cardio and I don't get in shape.
Zero cardio, and I trained twice a day. So I would do the large body part in the morning and a smaller body part at night. And I was able to.
Do you think not doing cardio, it helped keep you more muscle on you?
Full for sure. But listen, I think if I did cardio, I would have been in better shape. I would have been more competitive with Ronnie from the back, and I probably would have won this show, but would it have deflated my muscles?
But yeah,
more.
would you have been smaller?
And that's the problem. I don't know if I had enough mature, large muscle, because remember, I grew a lot in those years from 99, 2000, 2001. Now, I was seeing Steve Murphy, too, doing deep tissue out there, neuromuscular therapy. If you guys are ever in the Orange County area, look up Steve Murphy, because he is unbelievable at neuromuscular therapy, and I give a lot of credit. I would give 1% of my success to Steve Murphy, because he would work me every day off and work the fascias and open up all my IT bands, and he really, really helped me with my shoulder growth and my biceps. I mean, look at my arms there, man. It was just... those are the years that everything was just firing. And, I look back on those days, and those are the best days of bodybuilding. People might think winning the Olympia were the best days, but I was starting to endure some of the injuries as I led into the Olympia and the victory. But these were the days where there was nothing. It was no guest appearances like crazy. The mail order wasn't crazy yet, and I could focus fully on being a full-time bodybuilder. And that's what made me so great. When I became busier and I became more of a businessman, it actually hindered my bodybuilding career some.
I say that to when people that don't follow it as much will say, well, how come so-and-so doesn't look as good? They're Mr. Olympia. They should look better. Why are they off? And it's like, dude, some of these guys for the last 7 months, they haven't had more than 7 days where you get to sleep in their own bed. And when you're on the road training, you're not training as hard as you normally would at home, because you can get hurt. And you're not getting the types of food that you normally want. You're subject to, okay, what's the best option for me to get while I'm here? Because they didn't have meal prep. So you might not have gotten 6 good meals in. You might have said, oh, well, I got to go to Wendy's and grab some chicken filet or something. And, so I think Yeah.
Good old days of bodybuilding, bro. Orange County, California. Aliso Viejo. Moved to Vegas. My life became busier. Got surrounded by, more of a posse and more people wanted to train with me. And I always did best by myself on my own schedule.
Yeah.
That was how I really clicked, and I was hungry. I mean, Ronnie motivated me a lot then, and back then you used to wonder, what does my competition look like?
Yeah.
And as you see, we did those Olympia, Battle Force DVDs, but we also did our own stuff. But it was really, really a better time because I feel like you worked your ass off because you weren't sure how everyone else was looking, right?
Yeah. Now
Whereas
people
today,
leak stuff so you know.
Yeah, so they leak stuff, or you hear rumblings, or you can go on someone's social media and see the story and say, oh, this guy's face isn't sucked down as much, or, this and that. And everyone fixes their pictures too,
Was that the year that Ronnie came out with The Unbelievable?
Maybe. No, 2000, I think he came out with Unbelievable.
2000.
But that's the year he pulled the flag out of the trunks, which the props were illegal.
Yeah.
And even after this, they tried to nab me for the diuretic test, and I sued them. And
I remember. Yeah, what happened with that?
I mean, they were doing this crazy diuretic testing then, and everyone was still using diuretics, but they just weren't on the banned list or whatever else. And they claimed I flunked on 5 or 6 different diuretics, which was total crap. And I went against it. I said, you know what, I'm going to fight it, and I ended up fighting it and won because the samples were poor. They weren't taken care of properly, and I'd end up getting my money. But they wanted to take the $60,000 from me,
Yeah.
And that was my first big paycheck, remember? Yeah. I mean, I just had bought my house in California, and, I was doing really well. I was getting a lot of guest appearances at the time, at shows and guest posings, and I was starting to build a career. And, after this, my career just went through the roof. I mean, everyone wanted me to come out.
Of course.
And,
they usually had you and Ronnie.
Yeah. And I had just signed a great deal with ISS Research, which later became Oh Yeah. And, I was taken care of very well, and I started to make really great money. Back then, I was probably making a couple $100,000 a year from bodybuilding, which is amazing for 2001.
Yeah, it's 21 years ago.
Yeah.
There's guys that don't make that now.
Yeah. So for me, it was a great opportunity, and, I do miss the old days some. But this is why I posted this. I woke up to this morning and said, I want to post this. Of course, Ronnie commented on there too.
Yeah,
He said, "Yeah, buddy."
Ronnie's someone that people always say, "We need to get Ronnie on the podcast."
We'll get him.
I said, "Trust me, Ronnie would be one of the best people to ever have because you and him can talk about stuff that you've never talked about before." When's the last time you and Ronnie ever sat down and really talked like that?
Yeah, I wonder how much there he is. He puts "Yeah, buddy" on there. It got Kai Green on there, the gods of Olympus too. On.
Yep. We were talking off camera before, and I think this right here is what kind of started that standard, and we talk about that now with talent and brands and how they represent themselves. And, when you go to a company and you do a deal with a company, the top talent sets the standard for that company. So if Cutler Nutrition has an athlete, if you're not Jay Cutler and you sign J-Mac and he's not doing what he can do to make that company the best it can be, he's setting that standard for every other person below them to not, if he's not doing his posts and he's not doing his marketing, all you're doing is giving an excuse for the people at the bottom to not work as hard. But it all comes back to, at this point, you started setting the standard for you as, hey, I'm a top 2 guy in the world, and I'm here. And obviously we knew you were here to stay, and you stayed at that top 2 for over a decade. But you set that standard. It's not just me saying this isn't just setting a standard for a brand, but you set a standard for you, but you've taken that and you've used it in every aspect of your career as well. And that's why you're still
I just try to do my job, and it's like when Muscle Tech brought me on, I was like the top guy, right? But, I had a standard to be, right? And I think, my kind of reputation spoke for itself. I was always professional. I mean, I started with just not getting involved, and, I'm not one to speak on a lot of drama, politics or whatever else. And I'm still kind of that way where I'm reserved on how I speak through my social media channels and whatever else. But when I get involved with a company, I try to represent, and as you know, most of the brands I have equity or whatever. I mean, almost all of them at this point. So for me, I want to represent to the fullest and set the standard for the younger generation coming up. And people say, how do I get the contracts, or how do I get noticed, or, you know, it all starts with today or social media, right? How you handle it.
And it's simple. It's not a lot of work.
No, it isn't, but it does take time.
It does.
And you have to correspond with your fans. You know, I still could get better at going down and liking comments and commenting. I think that's part of the job too. I mean, it's not just about posting this picture this morning.
Yeah.
You know, I have to spend time today now to go through and comment on a couple things like the Ronnie Coleman thing. And I just think it's exciting, you know, when you can watch your audience grow, like by the numbers, where you weren't really sure, but when you were in the magazine, like, you didn't know how many people were viewing your stuff, right? How many people picked up a book. But now you can kind of like, oh man, I got a visual. That many likes. I mean, it's got 70,000 likes, I think now. If you
just think about this, kind of remove yourself from it for a second and think, this was a moment in time 21 years ago, and people still talk about it to this day.
That's what I just said to you. I said, can you imagine people still talk about 2001? And you just wonder, like,
there's kids talking about it that weren't alive.
When I'm 60, well, no one, I mean, 70,000 of those people.
Yeah.
There's probably 100 people that were like present there. You know what I mean? Or even like followed it in the books then. And it's just legendary, the times. And I'm just so thankful to be part of that, man. It's kind of like the pioneering of what bodybuilding was. And you're right, it's kind of set the standard, and I still think I look better in that shot, by the way. J-Mac, I don't know. What do you think?
That's one of the shows where the argument, you know, people always have their opinions on who should have won or blah, 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 or where they should have placed. That's one of the shows throughout history where I think the argument that you should have won is greater than the argument that you should have not won.
As it gets further away, it becomes more and more.
That's just my opinion. I'm not saying the judges were wrong, but I wasn't there. I wasn't there in person to see it, and I know it's different. And we always said this. People nowadays that see pictures of Ronnie and you, it wasn't like that when you saw it in person. It was different. You know, like even nowadays, they'll go, well, Ronnie was a certain size, but how would he have stacked next to this guy or this guy? And it's like, dude, if you didn't see these guys in person, it's not the same.
I know you would, like, listen, you can sit here and I want you to tell our viewers or whoever's listening, you're a Ronnie Coleman fan, right? I mean,
I was a fan of everyone.
But you
of course.
I mean, he was an absolute monster,
how
right? How
can't you be a fan of that? You know, it's Ronnie was just, we'll never see another person like him. He was a genetic freak. Do
you think Phil Heath was more genetically gifted than Ronnie Coleman?
Yes.
Yes.
I think he was more gifted.
Do you think Phil's physique is overlooked at being the greatest physique ever on the Olympia stage?
I don't think it's overlooked because I just don't think he wouldn't have beat Ronnie.
I think some years he could have battled.
Well, if Ronnie was off, of course. Yeah. But if you took Ronnie's best and put him next to Phil's best, what shot does Phil beat him?
Yeah. He wasn't as big, you know. That's the thing. It was a size thing.
Yes, it's still a bodybuilding show.
And I think the pictures are a little confusing for people because when you stack a picture next to a picture, like they look comparable, but it's so different when you're on stage. And that's why, like, you know, like we talk about, Dexter was more ripped at certain shows, or, you know, Chris Cormier was more symmetrical, but the overall sheer mass, right? And if, you know, there's different from Marcus Rule mass to my mass or Ronnie Coleman's. Like, everyone looked at Marcus and they say, God, he was bigger, but, you know, it just didn't flow as great.
Yes. If you took pictures of Phil and Ronnie and put them next to each other, you can make a lot of arguments. But like you said, if they were standing next to each other, Ronnie was 40 plus pounds bigger than Phil, and he's only a 2 inches taller. He would have just overwhelmed him with the width more than anything. Does Phil have one of the? I think Phil has a top 5 physique of all time for sure.
There's a lot of top 5. You know?
But
I mean, Dexter Jackson's arguably one of the
should
best.
be in there too.
Yeah.
But I just Ronnie was just different. You know, he was just different, man.
Tell us what you guys think. I mean, I want to know if you guys want to comment. who is the greatest in your eyes? I know we're going to get Arnold arguments here.
Of
we're
course.
Gonna get Sergio.
We're just talking about straight physique.
Yates, yeah.
Just straight physique.
We're going to be coming up we're going to do our Arnold preview at some point in the next couple weeks. We have a couple other guests we're working on right now that we have a surprise for everyone. But I wanted to, once again, thank everyone. We're approaching 10,000 subscribers. So we are going to do a 10,000 subscriber giveaway, okay? And we'll talk about that as when we break it and how we're going to choose that person. But we're going to pick someone. I think we'll probably base it off YouTube, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For YouTube channel, and kind of pick out, maybe a couple people. But, we're at almost 10,000. We want to thank you guys. If you aren't subscribed, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Like we said, Cutler Cast, we just spoke about like kind of our projection on what we want to do over the next few months. And we have some really cool stuff we're working for.
We listen to it. I'd read all the comments and see what people say. And we'll definitely, we're going to get more people involved.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to say it.
So appreciate you guys for episode 23. We're signing out, and we'll see you guys for 24 at the end of the week.